Intel Committee. Is Santos on the Intel Committee? Am I allowing Schiff to be on other committees? Go right ahead. Okay, let me be very clear and respectful to you. You ask me a question. When I answer it, it's the answer to your question. You don't get to determine whether I answer your question or not, okay? In all respect. Thank you. No, let's answer her question. You just raised a question. I'm going to be very clear with you. The Intel Committee is different. You know why? Because what happens in the Intel Committee, you don't know. What happens in the Intel Committee, although the secrets are going on in the world, other members of Congress don't know. What did Adam Schiff do as the chairman of the Intel Committee? What Adam Schiff did, use his power as a chairman and lie to the American public. Even the Inspector General said it. When Devin Nunes put out a memo, he said it was false. When we had a laptop, he used it before an election to read politics and say that it was false and said it was the Russians. When he knew different, when he knew the intel, if you talk to John Radcliffe, DNI, he came out ahead of time and says there's no intel to prove that, and he used his position as chairman, knowing he has information the rest of America does not, and lied to the American public.
Well, we know that this whole smear on Joe Biden comes from the Kremlin. That's been clear for well over a year now that they've been pushing this false narrative about the vice president and his son. But clearly, the origins of this whole smear are from the Kremlin, and the president is only too happy to have Kremlin help in trying to amplify it.
The whistleblower came forward. He said he did not know the individual, even though his staff had met with him and set it up. So no, he does not have a right to sit on that. But I will not be like Democrats and play politics with these, where they removed Republicans from committees and all committees. So yes, he can serve on a committee, but he will not serve on Intel because it goes to the national security of America. And I will always put them first, all right? And if you want to talk about Swalwell, let's talk about Swalwell, because you have not had the briefing that I had. I had the briefing and Nancy Pelosi had the briefing from the FBI. The FBI never came before this Congress to tell the leadership of this Congress that Eric Swalwell had a problem with a Chinese spy until he served on Intel. So it wasn't just us who were concerned about it. The FBI was concerned about putting a member of Congress on the Intel Committee that has the rights to see things that others don't because of his knowledge and relationship with a Chinese spy. They brought it to the works of the leaders. I've got that briefing. So I do not believe he should sit on that committee. And I believe there's 200 other Democrats that can serve on that committee. So this has nothing to do with Santos. Santos is not on the Intel Committee. But you know what? Those voters elected Schiff, even though he lied. Those voters elected Swalwell, even though he lied to the American public too. So you know what? I'll respect his voters too, and they'll serve on committees. But they will not serve on a place that has national security relevance because integrity matters to me. That's the answer to your question.
So I'll say this, Representative Schiff, Representative Swalwell, and also Representative Omar are, our expertise and bring a lot to the table when it comes to foreign policy and national security. I'll say that, when it comes to that committee, it should not be politicized. It should be independent. And again, those congressional members bring a lot of expertise to that committee.
This decision by Kevin McCarthy to bow to the demands of the most extreme elements of his conference and use the Intelligence Committee as this kind of political plaything doesn't show the strength of his speakership. Indeed, it shows the weakness.
What do you expect to happen? Will Kevin McCarthy succeed in removing you from that committee?
Well, he's certainly going to try, and he may very well succeed in doing it. And, the tragedy of this is not what he does to me personally. The tragedy is using the Intelligence Committee as his political plaything to placate Donald Trump, to placate Marjorie Taylor Greene,
to exact revenge, as you point out, for my leading the impeachment against Trump in the first trial.
You're fired.
To placate the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the Paul Gosars, and of course his boss down in Mar-a-Lago, the disgraced former president.
And the whole point is Congress will provide some oversight. Adam Schiff has never provided any oversight of the intel community. He is its pawn, its tool. He is working out his political agenda with the help of the intelligence agencies. You are not allowed to do that as the ranking member on the House Intel Committee. The whole thing's insane, and nobody ever says that. He's doing exactly the opposite of what he's supposed to be doing.
It's going to breed distrust in the intelligence community. They're not going to want to share information with Congress that we need to make good decisions.
Wow, Adam Schiff talking about distrust.
Adam Schiff made a career out of lying to the American people while serving as chairman of the Intelligence Committee. Without any question, just plain flat-out lying.
Yep.
When Adam Schiff was the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, and he had to be seeing the same things that Devin Nunes, the ranking member, were seeing, and yet they had completely different stories. Devin Nunes says that there was no evidence of any Russia collusion, but Adam Schiff went on TV and said that there was Russia collusion in plain sight.
I think there's plenty of evidence of collusion or conspiracy in plain sight.
There is significant evidence, much of it in the public domain, on the issue of collusion. In particular, the American people need to know whether the Russians still have something they can hold over the president's head, the President of the United States.
Schiff claimed he possessed actual evidence of Russian collusion. And he didn't just say that one time, he said it repeatedly.
Possible collusion between the Trump organization and the Russians.
We haven't seen the actual connection. We haven't seen an actual proof of cooperation and collusion. So what am I missing here?
The Russians offered help, the campaign accepted help, the Russians gave help, and the president made full use of that help. And that is pretty damning.
It looks a lot like collusion to me.
And you're a former federal prosecutor.
Yes.
And there is significant evidence of collusion. There is ample evidence, and indeed there is, of collusion of people in the Trump campaign with the Russians.
Well, in the end, you know what happened or didn't. Schiff did not produce the evidence. He didn't have it because it doesn't exist. Schiff was bluffing, which is to say, lying. He still is, actually. As of yesterday, Schiff was continuing to claim that the Trump campaign, quote, embraced foreign help, made use of it, and covered it up. In other words, collusion. Schiff still believes the collusion hoax.
There's never been a witness who's alleged conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia, and yet Adam Schiff, that three-eyed raven, Adam Schiff, who can see things nobody else can see, says he has evidence more than circumstantial, not quite direct. By the way, for those who didn't go to law school, there's no such thing.
Adam Schiff is a soulless liar. He's a man willing to say literally anything for political advantage. And that's really the worst of all. Being a lunatic would be much more appealing than that.
Joe Biden also showed today just what a capable president he is.
It's a bold-faced lie to the people of America, and it propagated this whole Russia collusion thing that turned out to be a farce. The only people that are political is Adam Schiff, and he doesn't belong in that position or on that committee.
With that, let me turn over to my colleague Eric Swalwell, who I've had the pleasure of serving with on the Intelligence Committee for a great many years, one of our finest members.
Eric Swalwell had sex with a Chinese spy.
Exactly.
So if that's not disqualifying for a seat on the House Intel Committee, I guess nothing is. Like, why not just appoint the Chinese spy herself to the Intel Committee? It's like, it's nuts.
Mr. Swalwell.
Thank you, Chairman Schiff. The new McCarthy looks a lot like the old McCarthy. I will be that president. I will be bold without the bold. The old McCarthy abused political power to punish and demean and smear his political opponents. And the new McCarthy in Washington today is doing the same.
There's no limit to the number of smoke bombs that Donald Trump and his team are willing to throw in legitimate investigation into what were the personal, political, and financial ties between Donald Trump and his team and Russia.
Abused political power to punish and demean and smear his political opponents.
As far as connecting the dots around Donald Trump and his team and Russia, what we have seen are deep personal, political, and financial ties.
And demean and smear his political opponents.
Carter Page, in July 2016, with the permission of the campaign as a senior foreign policy advisor at the time, travels over to Moscow. This is 1 month after it's widely reported that Russia is interfering in our election. Carter Page, someone with deep ties to Russia.
The Speaker of the House is using his power to go after his political opponents and to pick them off the field.
You said we're going to now have to refer to you as KKK Kevin or whatever you said. What is the thinking behind this move, Congressman?
I never go looking for a fight, but I will punch back twice as hard in my own defense when someone does that. And not just my defense, but the defense of this country and what matters most to all of us. And I just don't think he's up for the job. And frankly, when I receive, questions for comment about what McCarthy's going to do to me, my response is, why don't you catch up with me when he becomes Speaker? Because right now it seems that he doesn't even have the votes within his own conference to do that.
You're fired.
You were stripped of your committees. Why?
Political vengeance. Kevin McCarthy seems to want to heat up the leftovers of a story that goes back to Barack Obama's first term.
Their plan is to take me, Adam Schiff, and Ilhan Omar off the committees and put George Santos, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Paul Gosar back on committees. I think you see that is a uneven, vengeful approach.
Exactly. Literally a lie that he just told in front of the cameras. There's no indication.
It inspires these death threats. People parrot what Kevin McCarthy is saying when they call and make the threats. And so he knows that. We've told this to him. I have told this to him.
Can you stop him from kicking you off a committee?
No, if he has the votes, I cannot. But I think I can make the case that he's going after me in retaliation for our caucus voting to kick Marjorie Taylor Greene off the committee. And if you think that anything that I have said or Adam Schiff has said or Ilhan Omar has said is comparable to Marjorie Taylor Greene posting, on social media about killing Nancy Pelosi, then you just don't have the facts. And so Donald Trump and his team had significant ties to Russia. And right now, what we want to know is, were any U.S. persons working with Russia during this interference campaign?
The claims that Mr. McCarthy has made about me that I could never get a security clearance, Mr. Schiff was also briefed on and supported me staying on the committee because the FBI said 3 times, all I did was 2 things. I helped them over and over, and I was never suspected of wrongdoing.
Ancient Chinese secret, huh?
And just to be clear, Eric Swalwell was having an affair with a Chinese spy, right? Fang Fang?
Yeah, that's correct. He had an affair with a known Chinese spy. I mean, do you want to put that person on intel? He couldn't get a security clearance in the Army right now.
The Washington Post, in response to Mr. McCarthy's claims, gave him 4 Pinocchios, which is a whopper, the highest amount that they can give for one of the biggest lies that you could tell about somebody else.
So the idea that people with no integrity, and in Swalwell's case, a history of intimate contact with foreign spies, would even get in the door at the Intel Committee is crazy. I think it's best to just ignore their complaining. There's nothing they can do about it. They don't run the House of Representatives anymore.
Right.
Sorry.
Speaking of complaining, Swalwell's, of course, fundraising off this. He wrote in an email, part of it was Kevin McCarthy is obsessed with him. I think it's self-obsession.
That's unbelievable.